Hi friends, welcome to PSC Collegiate English. Today let us look at the poem Geetanjali. We would look into the verses 1 to 10. So Geetanjali is written by Rabindranath Tagore. Coming to Rabindranath Tagore as a poet, Tagore lived from 1861 to 1941. Rabindranath Tagore is an Indian Bengali poet, short story writer, song composer, playwright, essayist, and painter. Tagore introduced new prose and verse forms and the use of colloquial language into Bengal literature, thereby freeing it from traditional models based on classical Sanskrit. He was highly influential in introducing Indian culture to the West and vice versa. Tagore is an outstanding creative artist of the 20th century. In 1913, he became the first non-European to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature. Some of his works are Sonartari, Chitrangada, My Reminiscences, 1917, The Evening Song, The Morning Song, Gora, The Home and the World, The Gardener, The Crescent Moon, Fruit Gathering, Love's Gift and Crossing, The Fugitive and Other Poems, Rabindra Sangeet, which consists of 2230 songs. Coming to Geetanjali. Geetanjali can be transliterated into song offering, translated into songs offerings. Geet and Anjali. Geet, song, Anjali, offering. Tagore's crowning achievement is Geetanjali. Tagore was awarded Nobel Prize Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for this work, Geetanjali. A selection of poems presenting a synthesis of material and spiritual life in which the poet sees the realization of God through his 103 songs. Geetanjali has 103 songs and that is a sort of a conversation between the poet and the God. He realizes God in his life and that is portrayed through these 103 songs. W.B. Yeats has written Introduction to Geetanjali. The Geetanjali was published in Bengali language in 1910. The English version was published in 1912, which was translated by Tagore himself. Let us also look at Tagore as a mystic. Paula Hess says, while trying to seek spiritual explanation of naturalism in Geetanjali, she says that repetition of nature motif is rooted in the cosmogony of Rig Veda. Tagore was deeply interested in the cosmological origin of universe. Mystical spirituality of Tagore is not mysticism or irrational. His ecstatic worship is meditative. Reason is to culminate and assert divine love. Throughout the Geetanjali, Tagore expresses a joyful, personalized spirituality with emphasis on devotion, faith, and an individual's relationship with the divine, in contrast with official rules and practices of Orthodox religion. Although the poems in English language edition come from various sources, they can be understood with a narrative arc. So coming to the very first song of Geetanjali, let us look at the song first and later the explanation. Thou hast made me endless, such is thy pleasure. This frail vessel thou emptiest again and finnest it ever with fresh life. This little flute of a reed thou hast carried over hills and dales and hast breathed through it melodies eternally new. At the immortal touch of thy hands, my little heart loses its limits in joy and gives birth to utterance ineffable. Thy infinite gifts come to me only on these very small hands of mine. Ages pass, and still thou pourest, and still there is room to fill. So, this is the first poem. So, the explanation is God has created humans for his own joy. The body is compared to a vessel, and an incarnation of soul in different lives is referred to as this frail vessel thou emptiest again and finnest it with fresh life. So in Indian philosophy, there is a concept that once the soul never dies, only the body dies. Once a person dies, his soul goes to the Paramatma, and later on that soul might be incarnated into another human being or another living creature. That is Hindu philosophy. So that is what is reiterated here. Also, there is also in the bhakti movement and all, there were saints who sung songs about Lord Krishna, who always has flute in his hand. Please keep that image in mind. Tagore is a Hindu poet who who has incorporated the Hindu philosophy into all his songs. Only with these concepts in mind can you understand all these poems. So, Lord Krishna has flute in his hand, and poet compares body as the body of the flute and soul as the air that we fill the flute with. That is when music comes. So please keep these two philosophies in mind. One, the soul is indestructible. The soul incarnates into yet another form. That is one thing. Second one is the flute concept. Flute is equal to body, and the air is like the soul. The body is compared to a vessel, and an incarnation of soul in different lives is referred to as, "This frail vessel thou emptiest again and again, and finnest it ever with fresh life." The human body is compared to flute, which functions when God's breath is filled. Just the Krishna example. The poet experiences infinite joy when he experiences the joy of God. Man receives God's gift through the body. The poet says, God has ample to give and human beings have plenty to receive. That is, throughout a human life or span of life, God is giving continuously and human being is receiving continuously. Coming to the second poem, when thou commandest me to sing, it seems that my heart would break with pride, and I look to thy face and tears come to my eyes. All that is harsh and dissonant in my life melts into one sweet harmony, and my adoration spreads wings like a glad bird on its flight across the sea. I know thou takest pleasure in my singing. I know that only as a singer I come before thy presence. I touch by the edge of the far spreading wing of my song thy feet, which I could never aspire to reach. Drunk with the joy of singing, I forget myself and call thee friend who art my Lord. That is the second song. Let us look at the explanation. The poet is communicating with God. Here again, we must first of all understand the Hindu rituals. So it is as if a king is there and a servant has come to serve him. So the king is the god and the servant who has come to serve him is the poet. And in Hindu tradition, there is a practice of touching elders' feet to get blessing. So that is what is happening. The poet says that his heart fills with pride when God commands him to sing. The poet faces God and is overwhelmed with emotion. When the poet is in the God's presence, all the harsh and dissonant realities of his life melts into harmony. That is when one is meditating, our heart finds peace, and the mind is dissuaded from all the practical difficulties of human life. Through adoring the god, the poet becomes a bird gladly flying over the sea. The poet is ecstatic that God admires his ability, and only as a poet the narrator can enter before God. Just because he is a poet and just because God has commanded him to sing, he is in the presence of God. That is what the poet means. The poet could touch the feet of God using the edge of his poetic wings, which otherwise would not be possible. Indulged in the hang of poetry, the poet calls God his friend who is his Lord. So just as I said, God is like a king. God is like the Lord, somebody very superior. And poet, when he is very much ecstatic, he forgets this relationship and calls God his friend, who is actually his Lord. That is the second poem. Now let us proceed to the third song. I know not how thou singest, my master. I ever listen in silent amazement. The light of thy music illumines the world. The life breath of thy music runs from sky to sky. The holy stream of thy music breaks through all stony obstacles and rushes on. My heart longs to join in thy song, but vainly struggles for a voice. I would speak, but speech breaks not into song, and I cry out baffled. Ah, thou hast made my heart captive in the endless meshes of thy music, my master. That was the third poem. Let us look at the explanation. The poet says that he does not understand how God sings so wonderfully and he listens patiently. It is God's music which illuminates the world and the sound reverberates from sky to sky. The stream of the holy music breaks all stony obstacles and it rushes on. The poet aspires to join the song but struggles to find a voice. The poet's voice comes out as baffled speech but not as a song. So that is the pain that is in the heart of the poet, that he could not sing as beautifully as God. The poet complains that God has captivated him in his endless measures of music. So once the God's music is played, the poet is dumb. He cannot speak. That is the feeling, or that is the bhakti that is in the poet. Coming to the fourth song. Life of my life, I shall ever try to keep my body pure, knowing that thy living touch is upon all my limbs. I shall ever try to keep all untruths out of my thoughts, knowing that thou art that truth which has kindled the light of reason in my mind. I shall ever try to drive all evils away from my heart and keep my love in flower, knowing that thou hast thy seat in the innermost shrine of my heart. And it shall be my endeavor to reveal thee in my actions, knowing it is thy power gives me strength to act. Let us look at the explanation. The poet addresses God as life of my life and says that the poet would keep his body pure because he feels God's touch every time. So just because God has to touch my body, I'll have to keep it clean. So that is what poet means. He promises to be truthful because God's truth has kindled the light of reason in human mind. The poet would also try to drive away evil thoughts from his heart and mind because God's essence is found in the innermost shrine of his heart and soul. One has to speak the truth and keep your humanity alive, because in the innermost conscious of human beings, the divine presence of God is felt. The poet would try to do good and be righteous and do righteous action because the human body functions with the power of God. The poem explains various steps that the poet would do to secure God's presence in the body. So that is the summary of this particular poem. Moving to the next song, song number 5. I ask for a moment's indulgence to sit by thy side. The works that I have in hand I will finish afterwards. Away from the sight of thy face, my heart knows no rest, not respite, and my work becomes an endless toil in a shoreless sea of toil. Today, the summer has come at my window with its sighs and murmurs, and the bees are playing their minstrelsy at the court of the flowering grove. Now it is time to sit quiet, face to face with thee, and to sing dedication of life in this silent and overflowing leisure. Let us look at the explanation. The poet asks for an idle moment to sit by God's side. He says that he would resume his duty afterwards. The poet confesses that by being away from God, the poet has known no rest nor respite. He compares his work to an ocean. He says that after so many days, only today summer has come, the pleasant climate has come. And it has brought along with it bees and its humming song in a lovely garden. The poet feels that the right time to spend face to face with God has come, and he wishes to utilize this leisure time by singing dedication of songs and his life to God. This can be interpreted as maybe he is a middle aged, the poet is a middle aged person, and he has lived his life so far, and then he contemplates about death. So before his life slips away, he wants to spend some time with God. That is why he's saying, just like he has the burden of life, he has already seen so many problems, and now he wants to just meditate on God. So that's yet another interpretation. Moving to the next song, sixth song. Pluck this little flower and take it, delay not. I fear lest it droop and drop into the dust. It may not find a place in thy garland, but honor it with a touch of pain from thy hand and pluck it. I fear lest the day end before I am aware and the time of offering go by. Though its color be not deep and its smell be faint, use this flower in thy service and pluck it while there is time. Let us look at the explanation of this poem. The poet in this poem uses metaphor to compare himself to a flower. The poet requests God to pluck the flower and use it in his service before it droops and drops into dust. Even if the flower is not worthy of finding a place in God's garland, God should touch the flower and pluck it. The poet expects God to do the same with his life. God should utilize the poet before the time of offering goes. That means before his life ends. Here again, a symbol of Hindu pujas is represented. Time of offering. During the puja time, the gods, the deity's statue is decorated with flowers, and also abhishekam is done. That means the flowers are thrown to the feet of the deity. The same symbol is used. The poet says that when the time of offering comes, he wants his life to be dedicated to God's feet. The poet again recommends God to pluck the flower and use it in his service before the lifetime of the flower ends. So just this image, there is a deity and the poet wants the God to pluck the flower and take it for his service. The same with his life, he compares himself with a flower. He wants God to intervene into his life and make his life useful for God's service. Coming to the point number 7. My song has put off her adornments. She has no pride of dress and decoration. Ornaments would mar our union. They would come between thee and me. Their jingling would drown thy whispers. My poet's vanity dies in shame before thy sight. O master poet, I have sat down at thy feet. Only let me make my life simple and straight, like a flute of reed for thee to fill with music. Now let us look at the explanation. The poem is highly metaphoric. Here two metaphors are used. One symbol that you must keep in mind is of consummation of marriage. That is one. And second is the image of Lord Krishna. As I mentioned in the first poem, Lord Krishna who plays flute. So please keep these two images in mind. The poet uses personification to compare his poem to a bride at the nuptial night. So this particular line, my song has put off her adornment. The poem is like a bride who is waiting for the bridegroom to come and consummate the marriage. So here again in Hindu customs, as we all know, a bride would be decked up in jewels from head to toe, and that is how brides are decorated all wide India. And during the hour of consummation of marriage, the bride takes off all the jewelry, you know. So the same image is compared along with poetry. He says, my poetry is has my song has put off all her adornment. The poem has removed all the dress and decoration. She is devoid of ornaments because the jingling noise of all these ornaments, of all these worldly materialistic things, might drown the beloved's whisper. The poet then directly addresses God as the master poet. The poet says that he feels bashful before the great poet. As a minor poet, he feels bashful before the greater poet. The poet wishes his poem and the life to be simple and straight. He wishes it to be free from vanity, from pride. He denounces his pride so that God's essence would enter him like an empty flute being filled with music. Here again, Lord Krishna, playing on a flute and the magical voice that's coming out. The same thing. Body is compared to flute, and God, the air that that vibrates the flute and the sweet music that comes out, that is God's presence in human body, human life. So that is the explanation of this poem. Let us move on to the next poem. The song number 8. The child who is decked up with prince's robes and who has jeweled chains around his neck loses all pleasure in his play. His dress hampers him at every step. In fear that it may be frayed or stained with dust, he keeps himself from the world and is afraid even to move. Mother, it is no gain. Thy bondage of finery, if it keep one shut off from the healthful dust of the earth, if it rob one of the right of entrance to the great fair of common human life. So this is a simple poem. Let us look at the explanation. The poet tries to prove his point by citing an example of the prince decked with jewelry. The prince loses his pleasure at play because the dress hampers him at every step. When a child is wearing a new dress, we can find that the child would find it difficult to play because the child would not want to, want to keep his dress very clean. He might be conscious. Because of that consciousness, the child might not play well. The same example is used here. The child becomes very conscious to keep his attire clean from dust, and this awareness restrains his movement. The poem is as if a child is telling his mother that it is no gain to rob one's right of entrance to the great fair of human world, human life. So the poet is saying, if your materialistic things are barring you from entering into the spiritual world or entering into the world which has the true meaning, then there is no use of all these materialistic stuff. Again, an example of a prince is shown. That is, the prince is decked up in all the jewelry and fine clothes, and because of all these, the child does not have the freedom to play freely. The prince has every right, just like any other child, to play and enjoy the pleasures of healthful dust of the earth. The poet implies that by adoring materialistic way of life, some people fail to recognize and enjoy real purpose of life. So that is the poem. Coming to the next song. O fool, to try to carry thyself upon thy own shoulders. O beggar, to come to beg at thy own door. Leave all thy burden on his hands, who can bear all and never look behind in regret. Thy desire at once puts out the light from the lamp it touches with its breath. It's unholy. Take not thy gift through its unclean hands. Accept only what is offered by sacred love. Let us look at the explanation of this song. In this poem, the poet addresses the audience. The poet says that people do not understand their caliber and they try to achieve things that are beyond their capacity. They are like a fool who tries to carry himself on his own shoulders. Is that possible? No, one cannot carry oneself on one's own shoulders. That is not possible. The poet also compares such people to beggars who beg at their own door. The poet advises the people who run after materialistic benefit to leave such mad rush and surrender their burden to God, who can bear all and never regret the decision. The poet wants all the people to surrender to God. Maybe give, just submit all your problems to God. He will take after. That is the philosophy that Tagore is expressing through this poem. The poet says that men's desire is like the breath which lights off the holy lamp, the only source of salvation. That is, when a lamp or a candle is lighted, and if we go very near to it, what happens? Our own breath sometimes puts off the light. So poet compares the breath to greed. If you go very near the lamp, your breath might put off the light, which is the source of light in the darkness. Just like that, similarly, the poet says that don't go by materialistic things. If you're going by materialistic things, you might put off the sacred lamp, sacred divinity, which is the only source of salvation. The poet advises not to seek gifts through unclean hands. They should accept only what is offered by sacred love. That is, one should not go by greed or by materialistic values and try to capture which is beyond their capacity and beyond their worth. One should accept only what is given. That is, the poet wants us to be satisfied by what life offers to us. In short, Tagore says men should put a full stop to their vain desire but accept what life has to offer as a gift from God. Coming to the 10th song, which is the last song of this lecture, let us look at that. Here is thy footstool, and here rest thy feet, where live the poorest and lowliest and the lost. When I try to bow to thee, my obeisance cannot reach down to the depth where thy feet rest among the poorest and lowliest and lost. Pride can never approach to where thou walkest in the clothes of the humble among the poorest and lowliest and lost. My heart can never find its way to where thou keepest company with the companionless among the poorest, the lowliest, and the lost. Let us look at the explanation. The poet says that God's feet rest where the poorest, lowliest, and lost people live. The poet tries to pay obeisance by touching God's feet, but the proud man cannot reach there. The vanity and pride will not let a person approach near God. For God always keeps company with the poorest, lowliest, and the poor. The poet means that only when one is humble and one is compassionate about the poor, the lowliest of the people, when one tries to help or to upbring these people, like the poor or lowliest people, only then God might be pleased. Other than that, one cannot reach God because his feet is with the poorest people. So he wants the readers, if they want nearness to God, one has to be humble and try to help in all possible ways. So I have tried my level best to explain the 10 songs from the Gitanjali. So if you have any more suggestions, if you want any improvement, or if you want me to take any other poems or something, please let me know. Do comment in the comment box. Thank you so much for watching.